Call this meeting of the Urban Renewal Agency for the City of Salem for Monday, February 13th, 2023 to order. If the recorder will please call the roll.
Board Member Stapleton.
Here.
Board Member Nishioka.
Here.
Board Member Phillips.
Here.
Board Member Gwynn.
Here.
Board Member Gonzalez.
Here.
Board Member Hoy.
Here.
Board Member Nordyke.
Here.
Board Member Varney.
Here.
Chair Hoy.
Here. And if you'll join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everybody. Vice Chair Stapleton, do we have any additions or deletions to the agenda?
Not tonight.
Thank you. Do we have anybody signed up for public comment? Nobody signed up for public comment for the URA. So, Vice Chair Stapleton, that takes us to the consent calendar.
I move approval of the consent calendar.
Second.
Thank you. The consent calendar tonight, we have two items. Item 3.1A, which is a January 23rd, 2023 draft Urban Renewal Agency minutes. And item 3.3A, which is a fiscal year for 2022 Urban Renewal Agency annual financial report. And that concludes the consent calendar.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? If the recorder will please call the roll.
Board Member Nishioka.
Aye.
Board Member Phillips.
Aye.
Board Member Gwynn.
Aye.
Board Member Gonzalez.
Aye.
Board Member Hoy.
Aye.
Board Member Nordyke.
Aye.
Board Member Varney.
Aye.
Board Member Stapleton.
Aye.
Chair Hoy.
Aye. Motion passes. We have no public hearings, no special orders of business, and no information reports. But before we adjourn, I just wanted to check in with Ms. Rutherford to see if there was anything for the good of the order. Microphone, please.
The only thing that I would like to share is that demolition of the former UGM Saffron property is complete, and we will be looking at taking that to market in probably 5 months.
Excellent. That is really exciting news. Thank you so much for sharing that. All right. And seeing nothing else on our agenda, we are adjourned. We're going to take a strategic pause for just a moment, so stand by. All right. I will call this meeting of the City Council for the City of Salem for Monday, February 13th, 2023 to order. If the recorder will please call the roll.
Councilor Stapleton.
I'm here.
Councilor Nishioka.
Here.
Councilor Phillips.
Here.
Councilor Gwynn.
Here.
Councilor Gonzalez.
Here.
Councilor Hoy.
Here.
Councilor Nordyke.
Here.
Councilor Varney.
Here.
Mayor Hoy.
Here. All right, Councilor Stapleton, do we have any additions or deletions to the agenda?
Not tonight.
All right. So it's time for City Council and City Manager comments. Do we have any? Councilor Hoy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to let everybody know I attended the Crystal Apple Awards last Friday night. It was a wonderful event, very well attended and much needed recognition for quality educators. So glad the event is back. Thank you to the Salem Area Chamber of Commerce for taking it on and making the event a great one for all. Since our last council meeting, I've heard from a wide variety of folks. Young and old alike, it seems many are feeling unheard, unseen, and unsafe. The homeless situations move about but don't seem to stop. Graffiti in our area has rocketed out of control. Shopping carts and litter all over the place. Drug activity and sales take place in broad daylight. Crime happens, somehow, sometimes, with no response. Begs the question, what are we doing about it? Some feel one voice doesn't matter, especially in a time when more than one are feeling not heard. I began to doubt the processes in place, and then I rounded a corner toward hope once again. I was given the opportunity to learn a bit of Salem's history. Did you know Salem was the first city in Oregon to form neighborhood associations? I learned this from the city website. Neighborhood associations matter. Your voices matter. Hang in there and don't stop trying. This message is a message of encouragement. Good things are happening. Not fast enough for me either, but they are happening. Good people work diligently day by day. That which you do matters. Do not be discouraged. If you see something, do say something. Report it, so there's a record of issues and crime to track failure as well as progress. Someone once said, if only everyone would clean up their own porch, the whole world would be clean. Do what you can. Bit by bit, we can make things better. Because of the business I'm in, I'm all over town pretty much every day. My husband and I have taken it upon ourselves to pick up trash in our own area. We have returned over a dozen carts in just the last week. It may seem like a drop in the ocean, but it's an effort, a mindset, which puts into play a ripple of change for the better. We can do this together.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Phillips.
Thank you, Mayor Hoy. I just wanted to talk today about a couple things. First, on a personal note, I was unable to attend the Morningside Neighborhood Association meeting this last month due to kind of the consequences of a close family member, one of my siblings, having had a mild stroke. I won't share any more details, but he's recovering well. And I'm so grateful that he's got, outstanding healthcare coverage. Seeing that firsthand, it's so important. I have multiple other family members that I've recently learned are dealing with cancer. So it's been a rough couple of weeks, and I just need a little bit more time to catch up on emails. So I appreciate the patience of staff as well as any constituents who've reached out to me in the last 2 to 3 weeks. That being said, today I had the opportunity in my individual capacity as an emergency room doctor in Salem to testify on behalf of Senate Bill 704, which would take the next step of achieving and building out a reality where we have true health care for everyone in the state of Oregon. It was a worthwhile endeavor, and I would encourage people to look up Senate Bill 704 and to go to Healthcare for All Oregon's website to learn more. They continued the meeting to Wednesday, and they'll be accepting testimony through at least Wednesday, possibly Friday. And then beyond that, just kind of more routine business. I was really looking forward to and got the awesome opportunity to attend the AVID program at Leslie Middle School. And I was able to participate in their kind of career outreach where they got to talk to me as a healthcare provider. I met with 8th grade, 7th grade, and 6th grade classes. I want to thank Winter Curry for facilitating that, and I want to thank the various classroom teachers, teacher Trevor Robinson, who lives in my neighborhood, teacher Tyler Arthurs, and teacher Ms. Tardif. It was outstanding. The kids were well prepared. They had great questions, and I really look forward to what the future has to offer for those bright young minds. So yeah, it was a great time, and that's in Ward 3 as well, Leslie Middle School.
Thank you, Councilor. Other folks? Councilor Barney.
Thank you, Mayor Roy. Last Thursday, I had the opportunity to participate as the official council liaison at the first SPRAB meeting, which is the Salem Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. And this was a position that was requested by the Salem Parks and Recreation Advisory Board back in June because they wanted to have more direct engagement between the board and council. And so at the meeting, I'm kind of in the agenda. I'm given time at the same time as board members have their reports. Some of the things that they mentioned that they would like to see me participate in this position is bringing things from council actually to SPRAB and vice versa. I'm really excited about the fact that one of the items in their work plan for the year tie right into one of our strategic priorities of engaging our community. SPRAB board members are going to be reaching out and going to each of the neighborhood associations and talking about our parks, different timelines for things, volunteer opportunities, grant opportunities. So they're really on board and taking off. And thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Councilor, for doing that. That's a really important role. I'm really glad that you're taking that on. I know folks have had questions about what it means to have a liaison because we haven't had that actual position before. And so what I'm trying to do is to create just that link between boards and commissions where we don't have a council member present, so they actually have a connection to city council. They have a person that they can go to and talk with when they have questions and just be that kind of connection to us. So thank you for filling that role. I know you're going to do a great job, especially as a former member of the SPRAB. And along those lines, in terms of community engagement, stay tuned really soon for 90 parks in 90 days. I'm going to be working with the folks at Parks to really publicize all of our Parks properties, and that'll be coming out here in the next few weeks. So pretty excited about that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Nordyke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everyone. It's great to see you all again. For those of you who have been following the mental health epidemic that is happening across our state, impacting all demographics, particularly children, people of color, our BIPOC communities, our marginalized communities, our persons with disabilities, there is some movement afoot in the legislature, and I encourage you to follow House Bill 2757. House Bill 2757 will complete the implementation of Oregon's 988 system architecture. And 988 is the new nationwide suicide hotline number. And ever since it went live last summer, they've seen a huge amount of call volumes, people of all ages, all races, all backgrounds, reaching out for help, which demonstrates to me the great need. I know Councilor Hoy here mentioned some of the needs that she's seen here in Salem. And so I encourage you to take a look at that bill, talk to your legislator about it, and learn more about it, because one of the great things that might happen with that bill has everything to do with creating funding specifically for mobile crisis intervention teams across the state. So there is movement afoot as a nation, thanks to Senator Ron Wyden, our own senator from the state of Oregon for many years now. He has been instrumental in helping to create more funding, more Medicaid eligibility. And what I mean by that is reimbursement from Medicaid for crisis intervention, led by civilians, led by persons who have experience and expertise and education in mental health, and so on. So I see a lot of movement in this area, and if you are interested in following along, please by all means follow me on my Facebook page, and also talk to your legislators, find out where they stand on addressing the behavioral health crisis that is sending children to the emergency room, that is playing out on our streets. A lot of individuals who live on the street are folks who deserve and need treatment. So anyway, I just encourage folks to follow, because the session is young and a lot can happen between now and Sindai. In other news, I am continuing my new position at CASA of Marion County. That's Court-Appointed Special Advocates of Marion County, and we serve abused and neglected children. So we see kids coming to us in care who are 5 years old or younger and are already being diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder because of the things that they've been exposed to. And we know that behavioral health resources for children, especially affordable health care, especially culturally competent health care, especially bilingual health care, is very rare indeed. So as a city, we may not be in charge of those things, but we will encounter those things, and we will be asked time and time again, what are we doing? So this is food for thought, and I look forward to our discussion this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. I did testify in person on 2757 along with several other folks, so I was really happy to support that bill on behalf of the city. So thank you for highlighting that. Any other comments? Councilor Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mayor Hoy. Last week, City Manager Staley, Mayor Hoy, and I went to Washington Elementary and participated in the Safe Routes to School walk. About 100 kids joined us. Super fun, and I think we'll be hearing more about them. But just a quick reminder that the way the bus system is set up, if you live X amount distance from a school, you're not going to get a bus. You're going to have to either find a ride or walk. So we just to bring awareness. So it was a really fun event. And it was at Washington Elementary where my two younger kids went through all the grades. And this Friday is my ride along with the Salem PD. And I trust I'll be in good hands, and I'll report back next council meeting, so thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Other comments? City Manager Staley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just very briefly, I've asked Acting Public Works Director Brian Martin to say a few words about our Court Street conversion project. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Brian Martin, Acting Public Works Director. You've seen the construction out there for quite some time. It took a delay during the Christmas holidays as we didn't want contractors working during the Christmas season. But they have started working again, and we're anticipating it's probably going to be about 2 to 4 weeks before that Court Street two-way conversion project is finished. There's really only about 7 to 10 days worth of work. However, in order to put the painted striping down, the pavement has to be completely dry, and we need several days in a row to place that above a certain temperature. So we're getting close. Our project manager is working with our public information officer to get letters out to the businesses this week to let them know that it's coming, but you can expect to see that finished by the end of March.
So Court Street will be two-way from Front Street to Church?
High Street.
Front Street to High Street, so that's going to be a change.
That'll be a change. Yes, there'll also be signs out there marking the traffic control change ahead. Those signs will be out there for about 30 days so that people are continued to be reminded of that work and the changes.
And this is just the next phase in our goal of two-waying many of the streets downtown. So thank you for that update, Mr. Martin. I think this is really exciting. I think it's going to really help local businesses. I think it's going to help in terms of walkability and accessibility at a lot of local restaurants and different things. So I'm really excited about that. Thank you. Other comments? Mr. Staley, did you have anything else? All right, with that, we are on to proclamations. So I will invite forward Don Killow, the former chapter president of the National Association of Women in Construction, Chapter 198. Are we on? Are we on? There we go. Whereas the Salem National Association of Women in Construction, Chapter 198, has distinguished itself as the voice of women in construction in Salem, Oregon, for 50 years this June. And whereas the work done by the Salem NAWIC, Chapter 198, has benefited Salem through community development and educational programs, and whereas the Salem NAWIC, Chapter 198, has unceasingly promoted the employment and advancement of women in the construction industry, and whereas the construction community represented by Salem and NAWIC, thank you, Chapter 198, has been a driving force in fostering community development through renovation and beautification projects, promotion of skilled trades careers, and a positive vision of the future, and whereas the Salem NAWIC Chapter 198 has sought to achieve successful results for Salem and surrounding areas in a cooperative spirit with other organizations, now therefore be it proclaimed that I, Mayor Chris Hoy, do hereby recognize the Salem NAWIC Chapter 198 and its many dedicated volunteers for its steadfast work on behalf of and in support of women in construction, and do proudly proclaim the week of March 5th through 11th, 2023 as Women in Construction Week, and encourage our community to congratulate the organization on its many accomplishments. Dated this 13th day of February 2023.
I guess just a history of how the chapter has helped the city of Salem. A couple years ago, we were instrumental in the renovations to the Taylor House, which is the only homeless shelter for teens. We've worked with Habitat for Humanity on several projects, continue to have a very successful construction career day at the Salem Fairgrounds, which is going to be on April 25th this year, and where we've got over 600 students coming. We're attracting kids from around the state. I just got an inquiry from Baker City that they want to come out and bring their students to our construction career day. So we just want to continue to get the word out there that construction is a viable alternative to other education paths, and that students can earn, we're talking living wages right out of the gate, no debt, and have the pride and ownership that comes from knowing that they've contributed to the structures and the buildings that we all enjoy. Thanks.
Thank you so much. And now I'd like to invite up Dr. Irvin Brown and the members of the executive board of the Salem Kaiser NAACP
NAACP Branch 1166. Sure. Welcome. Welcome, everybody. Whereas in 1915, Dr. Carter Godwin Woodson, noted black scholar and son of former slaves, founded the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, and whereas Dr. Woodson initiated Black History Week, February 12, 1926, and for many years, the second week of February, chosen to coincide with the birthdays of Frederick Douglass and Abraham Lincoln, was celebrated by African Americans in the United States, and whereas it is imperative that each of us learns about, sheds light upon, and condemns the inhumanity of injustices and inequities that Black and African Americans continue to experience and endure, but moreover, that each of us takes action to realize true reforms. And whereas the Salem City Council has denounced racism as a systemic issue, creating disparate outcomes in many areas of life, including family stability, on January 25, 2001, Council adopted Resolution 2021-2, condemning white supremacy and racism, and Resolution 2021-3, affirming that racism is a public health crisis. And whereas Black History Month celebrates the achievements of African Americans in the arts, civil rights, education, entertainment, government, history, law, literature, medicine, military, music, politics, science, sports, and other endeavors. Whereas we at the City of Salem proudly commend the many achievements, successes, and contributions of African Americans whose roots began with a foundation of incredible strength, resilience, creativity, and unity, and now therefore, in recognition of African Americans past and present in our community, I, Chris Hoy, Mayor of the City of Salem, do hereby proclaim the month of February 2023 as Black History Month in the City of Salem, and encourage all residents to join in learning about and celebrating the contributions of African Americans have made to our country, our state, and to our community.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Councilors, and to our residents that are here with us. I do not stand here by myself, so we have the entire executive board that is here with me. We have our new president, who's right here, Mr. R.J. Hampton, and we have my co-chair, Ms. Veronica Murray, and behind him you'll see Don Negri, and his wife is over there, Christy, and of course our secretary right here is Tori Algie. And the whole purpose of us coming up here together is just to remind everyone, although this is Black History Month, how many of us know that Black history is America's history? This is where you say yes. Got it. Make sure we're on the same page. Because we know we're in this together. And we know when it comes to the things that we are doing in this city, it takes all of us. It takes a collaborative spirit. It takes a spirit of humility. It takes the opportunities for us to say, hey, we're in this together and we're going to make some changes. So we stand here today unified, not only as a team, but also with the vision that you have, and of course with the city councils that are here. So thank you again, and we appreciate the opportunity.
All right, now we are on to public comment. Thank you. First up is Josh K. If you'll step up to the microphone, be sure and hit the button so the green light comes on. State your name and your ward. Reminder that you have 3 minutes. At the end of that time, please stop. Thank you. Welcome, Josh.
Thanks. Hi, my name is, can you hear me?
Yeah.
My name is Josh Kay. I am here, I live in Marion County, in rural Marion County, but I'm here on behalf of my capacity as the chair of the City of Salem's Downtown Advisory Board. You should have received this memo, but I'm going to go ahead and just read it for the record, and I can take questions at the end if you'd like. One of the roles of the Downtown Advisory Board is to review and recommend to City Council the Downtown Parking Fund budget. The Downtown Parking District was created for the purpose of financing and administering within the Central Business District a program of economic promotion and a program of public parking for motor vehicles as outlined in SRC Chapter 7. In years 2020, 2021, and 2022, Downtown Advisory Board recommended Council's consideration for implementing of an on-street paid parking system in a memo associated with their annual parking fund budget recommendations. These communications outlined the board's concerns for the financial sustainability of the parking district model based on the increased costs to operate the district and losses in revenue based on the changes in shopping habits, increased remote working, and the loss of revenue resulting from the closures of large retailers that contribute to the downtown parking fund, such as Nordstrom, JCPenney, and TJ Maxx. In addition, increased vacancy in commercial space has impacted the parking tax revenue substantially. In 2022, DAB asked Salem City Council to direct staff to prepare a 24-month implementation plan, which should include a communication strategy to convert the downtown parking district model to an on-street paid parking system. And we are here again asking that implementation of on-street paid parking be considered. Now, DAB believes an economically vibrant and aesthetically pleasing downtown plays a key role in recruiting, expanding, and retaining businesses in Salem. And why is it so important to DAB? Well, because each year the negative impacts to downtown due to lack of sufficient revenue has increased substantially. And we want to see funding to support and address the following: more downtown events, better connections between the amphitheater activities, Riverfront Park, and downtown businesses, increased beautification, downtown cleanliness, sidewalk, power washing, landscaping, increased utilization, safety, and cleanliness of appearance of our downtown parking garages, place parking cost burden on the users of a parking space and not the businesses in downtown, and funding of reserves to cover current and future operating and capital improvement needs. And I've got a lot more to say, but 5 seconds is dwindling away. So I'd encourage you to read the remainder of the memo, specifically the last 3 paragraphs.
Thank you, Josh. One thing I know that, just in the last several months and for my last 6 years on council and just observing the whole situation is I agree with you that our downtown parking situation is broken. That I know. I'm not 100% sure what the answer is yet. I have an idea, but I know that I know we have to make a change from the business perspective, from the employees' perspective. I've had conversations with employees recently, people who work downtown, who are, it's not working for them either. And I know as a consumer who visits downtown, I myself have gotten a parking ticket when I returned I was parked in front of a local business in the morning, and I returned later that night, forgetting that I'd already parked in that block once that day, several hours prior, and I got a parking ticket for returning, which to me doesn't make a lot of sense for our businesses. Doesn't make me super excited about wanting to risk that. So I am actually intending to bring a motion to City Council at our next meeting to start the process of looking at parking downtown. Again, I don't know what that's going to look like, but I want to start the process. So thank you for bringing this forward. I really appreciate it. I think it's timely, and I think it's time that we really take a good look at it.
Thank you, Mayor.
Councilor Nordyke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I remember growing up in Salem, I had a part-time job in high school, and it was always a struggle for me to park downtown. I worked at Ranch Records, right in the heart of downtown Salem, and parking was always a challenge. And of course, I was making minimum wage too. So my curiosity is, what is DAB's position on whether employees who have to park on the same city streets, should they be subject to or exempt from this fee? For example, would we give out passes to employees downtown? I'm just curious what DAB's position is on that.
Sure, and thanks for the question, Councilor Nordyke. We don't have a formal position on policies, procedures, terms, conditions we've certainly got a bunch of ideas. It's fun to talk about and explore, and that's why we're really encouraging to direct council to bring in the necessary expertise and consultation to get these questions answered and to make sure everybody's voice is heard across the whole spectrum, from employees to the business owners. And the biggest asset that we do have is the parking garages. And so I think there's a larger conversation about what's sustainable and balancing that with what's fair and equitable when you consider all the stakeholders.
May I ask a follow-up? The other point I want to raise, and I see Director Rutherford sitting very upright in her chair. As I'm sure you're aware, we have urban renewal funds that are expressly available to our downtown businesses, including things like security upgrades, lighting improvements, all kinds of other things that are specific to helping our downtown businesses thrive. Does DAB share that information with the downtown business community so that they know that they can apply for those kinds of funds?
I'm going to defer to Director Rutherford. I think it's important on the record to talk about the difference of the parking fund budget with the urban renewal area, because they are mutually exclusive. If you would, please.
Ms. Rutherford, if you could turn your mic on, please.
Button. The Downtown Advisory Board's purview is to be advisory in capacity, and I do think that a lot of the individual members do share information, but it's not the scope of the board. So it's not as if they have a program where they do that sort of outreach and information sharing. I think it occurs more ad hoc as they, talk with colleagues and friends and coworkers downtown. We have other avenues in how we share that information, and the kinds of funding that you're talking about through urban renewal for security upgrades and so on have been in very high demand in the last couple of years, and we continue to fund that. Regarding parking, as Josh shared, they are two distinct funds with no crossover with the business taxes paying into the parking tax. But for employees, we do have daily permits that I believe are $3 a day. So if you're not a daily parker downtown, if you're just working part-time, we do have options that are more affordable for the part-time employees.
Thank you, Ms. Rutherford. Councilor Stapleton.
Thank you so much, Mayor. Thanks for coming down, Josh. It's always good to see you, and thank you for your work on DAB. I'm really curious to know if you have any, well, let me start here. For the benefit of the community, could you kind of give a general, short description of what those last 3 paragraphs you have in your hand would be? And then also, could you just talk about how DAB has talked about, if they have, how this would roll out, and what the kind of the vibe of the community downtown is with this. I know that you guys have a really plugged in feel for what's going on downtown. So have you talked about this with others? What's kind of the general vibe downtown?
Thank you for the question, Councilor Stapleton. I think the best way to answer this would be just to read the 3 paragraphs, and I promise that it'll be brief, because there's a theme here. So over the years, downtown parking utilization surveys were completed that indicated the demand threshold supported an on-street paid parking model. Additionally, incentivizing downtown housing development will increase demand for these on-street spaces and create even more congestion than we're already experiencing. The board has explored a variety of strategies for increasing revenue which have not been sustainable to cover the economic promotion and to operate and maintain the downtown parking resources. So we believe that the closure of the parking district, parking phone applications, communication strategy to stakeholders, and education on how to use a pay station are critical elements that would need to be included in an implementation strategy to convert the current free parking model to an on-street paid parking system. And the initial 2023-2024 parking fund budget projections reflect ongoing revenue challenges and increased costs in order to maintain basic services for operating the district. So we ask for your support in moving the implementation of an on-street paid parking system forward in downtown. Now to the vibe, I think it's a challenge, and they're only going to see more congestion. I know that there was a meeting that took place a couple of weeks ago where this was brought up, and it was poised to Mayor Hoy, and it was very evident that there is a challenge in educating and how this conversion works. It's rare that you see a downtown with free parking everywhere and underutilized parking systems and garages. So I think downtown is ready for it. We certainly need it, but it's going to take a serious load of communication to get there and make sure every voice is heard.
Thanks, Josh. Ms. Rutherford, while we're on this topic, could you talk for a moment, maybe for the rest of the council's edification and also for the public? We've done some things recently with sort of working on the situation with the parking garages downtown. Could you maybe mention what those are?
Are you referring to the cleaning and safety and security?
Yes.
So we've had projects that have been completed and projects still in the works related to safety in the parking garages. One project that we implemented just kind of at the beginning of COVID, outside of the Chemeketa Parkade, was to have a large sign so that as you're driving by, you can see how many spaces are available within the parkade. We want to communicate and make it easy for people to know that is an option where there are spaces. We've been doing lighting improvements within the parkades, and that continues. We've increased our cleaning and pressure washing of the parkades. We've got 24/7 security. We're upping our security. So I signed that paperwork just here in the last few days. So we, in terms of just staffing capacity, contracted capacity for cleaning and security, and our own facilities department, we've got a lot of resources addressing issues within the parkades.
So folks have had concerns in our parkades in the past. Things are changing, and we actually have 24/7 security within our parkades. Is that true? That's what you
That's
said?
correct. And I'd also like to add, we monitor calls for service, the calls that go into the police department where there have been issues. And those numbers have trended downwards. So I think that there's a lot that's visible outside parkades, especially around the Marion Parkade, that I think cause community members concerns. But total, between all three of the downtown parking garages, those calls for service have been decreasing over the last year.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments for Mr. Kay? Councilor Nishioka.
Thank you, Mayor Hoy, and thank you for the information about the increased security. I do think that we all know that people want to park on the street right in front of the store or the restaurant that they're visiting, and for whatever reason, the parking structures are underutilized. I would love to find ways to really promote them, market them, make them a place that feels comfortable and safe and easy to get to wherever you're going. And that's going to be a big task, but it would be, I appreciate what you're already doing, and I think with that and some other potential ideas, we can see more people parking in the parkades.
Thank you, Councilor. Anything else for Mr. Kay? Thank you, Josh, for coming down. We really appreciate you raising this issue.
You bet. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Jim Vu. Reminder, state your address or your ward, and you have 3 minutes.
Good. My name is Jim Vu. I live in Ward 8, and I'm coming to you as the Salem Main Street Association Board President. The statement I'm making, our mission for the Salem Main Street is to advocate for business owners, building owners, and residents, all with the goal of having a vibrant downtown. I'm speaking today in support of the Downtown Advisory Board's recommendation to update the parking tax policy. In terms of on-street parking, we're not comfortable as a board. We still need to talk to the constituents all throughout the downtown area. What we're looking at is just the current tax policy, and parking tax is broken. We've got to figure out a new solution. So as a board, we don't know what a meaningful solution looks like, but the current system doesn't work. The parkades are in disrepair, and we do not have the proper turnover on-street parking. Look from a revenue standpoint, I would think from a functionality standpoint. As the urban studies have shown, ideal world is that every single block has 2 parking spots available anytime. That's the proper turnover on the streets, and we currently don't have that, especially during the busy times. We're looking for a solution that is sustainable, simple to understand, and straightforward. The Salem Main Street Association would like a seat at the table to create this solution. Identifying a problem without a solution is just whining. The Salem Main Street Association wants to work with the City of Salem to create a meaningful, long-term solution that will help downtown be a healthy and vibrant destination.
Thank you. Questions or comments for Mr. Vu? Councilor Nishioka.
Having been on the advisory board, Downtown Advisory Board, the budget has been broken for a while, so I agree. I think, trying to figure out how to make that work for the funding for the activities downtown would be very helpful.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Stapleton.
Thank you. Hi, Jim. Thanks so much for coming down. It's good to see you. I had a quick question, and this is for Acting Director Brian Martin. When I looked at our CIP for this last cycle that came through, I think there was over $5 million in there over the next 5 years on repairs to our parking garages. Is that correct?
I'd have to defer to Director Rutherford on that one.
Sorry.
So should have just taken it. I cannot tell you the exact amount off the top of my head, but we do have a number of capital projects included. There are a number of issues with several of our parking garages tied to the decks, the lighting, a variety of the stairwells, glass, many things. At the Marion Parkade, because we have been pressure washing it so much, we're starting to damage the concrete and the brick. So it's those kinds of repair projects that are included.
Great, thank you. I wanted to highlight the fact that not only are we really investing in the security downtown, but also the structures that we have for parking. And those are, in the coming years, we'll be seeing, of course, we want them all right now, but I know that the city is doing a lot to increase the usability of those structures. And I think I've talked with Jim several times about just wanting to really invest in the vibrancy of those, not only just their functionality, but we want to draw people there. And so even if that's pulling in public art or whatever it is, it would be just wonderful. And I know that a lot of that work is happening. I'd love to have you guys at the table for the conversations about downtown parking as well. So thanks so much for coming down.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Appreciate you coming down and testifying. Quinn Burke. Reminder, state your ward or your address, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Quinn Burke, and I'm a resident of Ward 4. I'm here on behalf of leader in the agenda regarding Airbnbs in the city of Salem. So Brandon Fallman and I purchased a home at 795 Church Street with the intent of using it as an Airbnb. Before we purchased, we did our due diligence and studied the code, which clearly states that short-term rentals are an allowed use in residential zoning with conditional use. We closed on the purchase, and we've paid nearly $9,000 in fees to the city of Salem, all in good faith that the written code would be applied to our home. I found 2 other short-term rentals that went through a similar process, one in the Northeast Neighbors area and one in the Southwest Association of Neighbors. Both were approved without protest, and neither went before City Council, nor should they have. Now, we don't know exactly what's going to happen with our case this evening. We saw it's on the agenda for information only. But we kind of wanted to give voice to the experience that we've had throughout this process, kind of feeling like we've been singled out. My colleague Brandon will mention more of that in his testimony succeeding mine. The neighbors of Gady Hill want you to believe that short-term rentals destroy neighborhoods, but that is not true. Now bear with me here. Through a quick search on Airbnb, I found approximately 125 active full home vacation rentals in the city of Salem. Of those, less than 25% are permitted, and very few have a conditional use permit where it's required. Many of these have been operating for over a year. Now, we by no means endorse this practice of noncompliance. We think it's unethical. But here is my point. The reason that these non-legal short-term rentals continue to operate is because they do not receive complaints from neighbors. And the reason they do not receive complaints from neighbors is they are not a nuisance and they are not destroying their neighborhoods, which is the case for the majority of short-term rentals. The city of Salem has been proactive in shutting down non-legal, non-conforming short-term rentals when a neighbor does file a complaint, but complaints are very rare. We have followed the process, abided by the written code, and the hearings officer approved our conditional use. We look forward to welcoming out-of-staters into our community and showing off the beauty of the city of Salem. Thank you.
Thank you, Quinn. Other questions or comments? Councilor Gwynn.
My question is actually for Lisa, and you know what I'm going to ask you.
If this is regarding an item on our agenda, perhaps it would be better to save it for that agenda item. I don't know what your question is, but I just wanted to say we will be having a
and I
conversation.
was speaking to what he said, but I can wait.
It might be better to
can wait.
if it's regarding the agenda item, just to
I
wait
can
for that. Perfect. Thank you so much. Any other comments or questions? Councilor Nishioka.
I would just like to thank you for coming and testifying.
I appreciate you giving me the time to voice my concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Brandon Fallman.
Hi, I'm Brandon. I live in rural Polk County. And yeah, I'm piggybacking on Quinn a little bit. And I feel kind of selfish because everyone's had all these altruistic things and we're just talking about our house. But specifically, I'm just going to be talking about the decision for our house at 795 Church. And I just want to kind of bring attention to the council, the inconsistent policies being applied to the short-term rental process. I have specific examples of different conditional use permits and the conditions imposed upon each operator. And I believe that we've been given kind of an abnormal and unfair number of conditions due to a hyperactive neighborhood association and a small, riled up group of neighbors within Gaiety Hill. Our short-term rental was approved with 8 conditions. Most of the short-term rentals are approved with 3 standard conditions, and then it seems additional conditions are applied inconsistently from there. Here's a specific example of the inconsistent application of conditions imposed. A conditional use permit was granted on May 3rd, 2022 for an operator to rent out 325 West Vista as a short-term rental. 4 conditions were imposed, including limiting the number of occupants, 1 group of guests per rental, only to be rented for the provisions of lodging, and the permit is only valid for the current owner. There is no mention of bicycle parking. Condition 5 for our conditional use permit requires 4 bicycle parking spaces, 2 of which must be located indoors. So I'm asking council to change the conditions imposed on our short-term rental to the following, being more in line with some of the standard conditions imposed on short-term rental operators. Condition 1 is to be changed to the following. The maximum number of occupants shall not exceed 8 persons. For the purposes of this condition of approval, children under the age of 12 do not count towards the maximum number of occupants. Condition 4 is to be removed. Condition 5 is to be removed. Condition 6 is to be removed. Condition 8A is to be changed to the following. The operator will provide sufficient off-site parking spaces for guests to comply with the then existing off-street parking requirements in the code. As needed, the operator may rent or lease additional off-site, off-street spaces. Due to limited time of 3 minutes for testimony, I cannot effectively express how the additional conditions that are being unfairly imposed, but I do have other written decisions completed by the same hearings officer in my hand, and I'm open to questions and discussion with the council members. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there questions or comments from council? Thank you for your testimony. Now, I see that Angela Jones has signed up, but also has a note here that you're available to answer questions. Do you wish to address the council, Angela Jones?
I was invited by one of the council members.
If you want to speak, you have to come up and introduce yourself.
My name is Angela Jones, and I run 24/7 property management. I host mostly short-term rentals and month-to-month rentals in the city of Salem, but I do have 12 condominiums in Lincoln City. I was asked by one of the council members to come tonight and be available to answer questions, as I've been in the business for over 7 years now as a licensed property manager, specifically in the business of short-term rentals and month-to-month rentals. I do own a commercial building in downtown Salem. However, I do not live in the city limits.
Thank you. Are there questions or comments for Angela? Councilor Nordyke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Jones, for coming. I'm curious, what kinds of folks are using short-term rentals in Salem? What are like some basic types of folks that you see? Are they coming here for short-term work? Are they coming here because they are here for the session, the legislative session. Can you just give me a brief overview? What are the kinds of folks that you see who rent out properties on a short-term basis?
Absolutely, I'd be delighted to, because it's a good education. I submitted about a 4-page letter. It is in your packets. So I outlined a lot of the different uses of short-term rentals. So we do have our vacationers that come to our lovely area to vacation, and they come for many reasons. We do host a number of Willamette University and Corbin University family members that come and spend a lot of money in our restaurants and in our city itself, let alone educating their children here. I do house a number of healthcare workers, FEMA agents, and construction workers who come in for a period of whether it's usually 6 to 9 months. They can't sign a year lease. I have a senator right now in one of my month-to-month rentals downtown, and I also have a representative in one of my month-to-month rentals downtown. I house people in need. I have 3 people right now that I've rescued. Their homes have been either set on fire, they've had a flood in their home, and they have to move out. They have to take their family, their children, and their pets with them, and the only choice would be to live in a hotel for many weeks, 6 weeks to sometimes 6 months, depending on supply and demand of the repair of their home. And that is a very uncomfortable place. I do have many homes in neighborhoods, and I try to keep these families in their neighborhoods so their children can stay in their school districts and attend their events. So I do rescue a lot of people. I have a young man right now who's waiting on public housing for him and his young daughter, and I'm housing him at $40 a night while his housing comes through. So I provide a huge service to the community, not just for the people who want to come and vacation in our city and our Willamette Valley, which is wine country. And so thank you for asking that question.
May I ask one follow-up?
Sure.
What's your vacancy rate like these days?
So my job, I am a stewardship of your property. So my job is to not only maintain your property, but to also make sure that you receive an income with your property. So I have a very low vacancy rate, sorry. I work my properties very highly, and when I see a property go vacant, I reach out to people who have a higher need at a lower price, and I will go ahead and house them just to make sure that property stays profitable and it stays occupied. My worst nightmare is an unoccupied property. It means I have to drive by that property every single day. I have to watch that property constantly, and I'm a little bit of a shark. You know, I will go to the mat for these property owners. They've spent a tremendous amount of money renovating these properties. They've taken derelict properties in really bad neighborhoods, but they're close to the downtown core, and so they're ideal for housing our Willamette University parents, and they love that access. And many of these properties that have been renovated and brought up to being a lovely, beautiful addition to the neighborhood has stimulated other neighbors in the neighborhood to bring up their properties, and it's raised the bar. So not only are we welcome in the neighborhoods, I do not have complaints. If I have a house that's large and a potential for a lot of parties in that house, I will talk to that property owner about having that be a month-to-month rental. And so that reduces the amount of a possibility of traumatizing the neighborhood. We are not there to traumatize the neighborhood. We are there to support, build, maintain, and encourage the neighborhood.
Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. Are there other questions or comments? Thank you for your testimony. And Councilor, I see we have one person signed up under item number 8, and since we did inadvertently have 2 people already addressing something that should have been under item number 8, I feel compelled to call them up now rather than having to wait till the end of the meeting, if that's all right with you all. Great. Evelyn Bross. If you could hit the button there to, thank you so much. Perfect.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. I'm Evelyn Bross. I'm new to Salem. I just moved here in November. I have an issue I need to see if you can help me with, because I'm new to Salem, so I don't know where to address this, so I'm coming to you. Okay, the topic is for all citizens of Salem. I live in West Salem right now. I've had 24 surgeries in my life. I've had 4 surgeries the last 2 years. My last one was in April, a breast cancer surgery. Okay, just 2 weeks ago tonight, I had my arm hurting. It turned stiff, and it got numb and tingly. I had a headache. My eyes were blurred in vision. I had pain in my neck. I called 911. The ambulance came. My blood pressure was 180, or almost 190 over 106. Okay, I went to the hospital at Salem Hospital, ER. This is where the topic is about, Salem Hospital, ER. Okay? I went in there. They put an IV in me. It's still black and blue from 2 weeks ago. I was there for 14 hours, no IV fluid, nothing to drink, basically dehydrating after 14 hours in the ER. They put a needle in me, but no IV fluid. They did a MRI, a CAT scan, and they did ultrasound on my neck. They admitted me, but I'm still in the ER. The thing is that they never put no fluid in me. I never had nothing to eat or drink. Then they were going to put me upstairs. They admitted me to have the ultrasound on my neck. Well, so they admitted me, and I'm supposed to go upstairs, be admitted, and see the neurologist doctor. And then the room was ready, but they said, oh, it's not ready, it's not ready. So I was supposed to go there 8, 9 o'clock in the morning, but it's still 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm still downstairs, and I need something to drink. I need something to eat. I don't have no ID fluid, no nothing. A person in the ER waiting room has died. They did not take that dead person out of the ER to take them back there to take care of them. Somebody came to the ER in the waiting room, and they stayed out in the waiting room, and they're dead. They found out there's a dead person in the ER. They did nothing. They says there's no room back here for that dead person. So that dead person stayed out in the ER.
Ms. Bross, I really am sorry, but your time has expired. I'm going to ask you to step over and speak with Ms. Bennett and see if she could perhaps help you with a resource in terms of talking with Salem Health or something. We don't have any authority over the hospital, but she is really excellent at navigating those sorts of things.
Okay, but one thing I wanted to address is that you need another hospital. They told me that they are as busy, the second busiest hospital in the West.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much for coming down.
Hi.
Thank you, Ms. Bennett. And with that, we are on to the consent calendar. Councilor Stapleton.
Thank you so much. I move approval of the consent calendar with the exception of item 3.3F pulled by Councilor Nordyke.
Second.
Thank you so much.
Councilor?
Yeah, the consent calendar consists of quite a number of things tonight. First off is item 3.1A, which is the January 23rd, 2023 draft City Council minutes. Item 3.3A, a compensation adjustment for sworn police employee ranks, and the non-represented executive assistant and recreational seasonal job classifications. Item 3.3B, amendment to lease for real property with 471 Salmon LLC for city leased space at 471 High Street Southeast. Item 3.3C, appointment of Melissa Parker as municipal judge pro tem. Item 3.3D, intergovernment agreement for the exchange of services between the City of Salem Fire Department and Chemeketa Community College Emergency Service Program. Item 3.3E, priorities proposed for the City Council's annual work plan, the 2023 City Council policy agenda. And that is our entire consent calendar right there.
Thank you, Councilor. Is there any discussion? Councilor Nordyke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just real quickly, I see that Melissa Parker submitted her name for consideration for the judicial position. And for those of you who may not be immediately acquainted with Ms. Parker has been an outstanding member of the Oregon legal community, but specifically the Salem area legal community, which is why I think she'll be an excellent choice for this position. She served as president of our local Inns of Court, which is a club of local lawyers and judges where we meet to discuss a wide variety of issues facing the bar, access to justice for low-income Oregonians, and much more. And she also brings substantial background and expertise from the criminal defense side of things. So she knows what it's like to represent persons in poverty who are dealing with a whole host of comorbidities, a whole host of challenges that can range from everything from homelessness, mental illness, domestic violence, human trafficking, racism, and the list goes on and on. So I just want to say I was so pleased to see that she applied for this position. I encourage my colleagues to vote yes.
Thank you, Councilor. Any further discussion? If the recorder will please call the roll.
Councilor Nordyke.
Aye.
Councilor Varney.
Aye.
Councilor Stapleton.
Aye.
Councilor Nishioka.
Aye.
Councilor Phillips.
Aye.
Councilor Gwynn.
Aye.
Councilor Gonzalez.
Aye.
Councilor Hoy.
Aye.
Mayor Hoy.
Aye. Motion passes. And with that, we are on to public hearings. Item 4A.
The Salem City Council will now conduct a public hearing concerning the 2021 Annual Action Plan Substantial Amendment Number 2 and the 2022 Annual Action Plan Substantial Amendment Number 1 Home Funds. The hearing will begin with staff presentation, and if there are any individuals, they're limited to testifying. They're limited to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. And I see we have Ms. Otis here. Thank you so much.
Good evening, Mayor Hoy and Council. I'm so pleased to present tonight in person. Past presentations have been COVID-related and on Zoom. So I will be putting up a small PowerPoint. And the glare is very hard to see. Where's my, oops, I'm making things bigger and smaller, sorry. There we go, there we go. Come on, mouse. My mouse is not happy. Thank you. All right, I'm Tiffany Otis from Urban Development with Federal Programs, and I'm here tonight to present about the Amendment Number 1 for the 2022 AAP and Amendment Number 2 for the 21 AAP. We have a 5-year consolidated plan with the priorities to end homelessness, expand affordable housing, neighborhood revitalization, and promote economic development. I can't see, I'm sorry.
That screen's a little bit of a challenge.
There we go, okay. There we go. Sorry, guys.
It's okay.
The annual action plan is what details the specific projects and funding amounts in our 5-year consolidated plan that's currently running. The substantial amendments are required if it is above $50,000 in funding and needs the council approval in order to submit the amendments to HUD for the ongoing projects. And this is the opportunity for public comment. So there was substantial dollars amount that was assigned to Applegate Terrace for a project over in West Salem that I know you were all aware of in past year. And they were putting in for other funding in order to make the project happen from OHCS, and OHCS denied that funding to them. They alerted the city staff to the federal department and recognized that they would be returning those funds because without the OHCS funding, they could not make the project happen. So the federal program staff alerted the director and staff, and they decided to go ahead and divide the funding onto ongoing current of the Salem Housing Authority, Sequoia Crossings, and the Dev Northwest Cotter Street Apartments. This funding assisted in both projects for gap funding to be able to make them happen, and they are broke ground and they are currently working. So the total award with this additional $450,000 for Sequoia is $2,050,000, and the total award with the $650,000 is $1,753,070, which makes those projects both complete and ongoing, and they have started with construction. The next steps with approval tonight from City Council is recognizing that they're already underway, and it's necessary to put HUD approval on these amendments. And we will have ongoing monitoring and program evaluation, and then reporting current outcomes in September with the consolidated plan through the Keeper. Thank you.
Thank you so much. These are two very exciting projects. I know that the Sequoia Crossings will be permanent supportive housing, focused primarily on families who are in need of permanent supportive housing, which is a huge gap that we have right now in our system. And the Dev Northwest property is going to be for veterans.
Yes, sir.
So that's very exciting that these funds were available to help those projects come to fruition. I know that there's a ceremony coming up really soon for Dev Northwest, so that's I'll be over there.
February 21st?
February 21st,
Yes.
speaking at their, it's right before our work session. I'll be doing the ribbon cutting, I think it is, or
And
groundbreaking.
the invitation was open to HUD, and we received message that our HUD representatives are going to come.
Yeah.
And they'll be doing a tour for Yaquina, Sequoia, and the Dev Open House. So we encourage all of you to come and see these projects started.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions for Ms. Otis? All right, well, thank you. With that, we will close the public hearing. Hold on, I'm getting a, was that no?
So no person signed up?
Nobody signed up.
Okay, just
Yeah.
wanted to clarify.
Thank you. Nobody signed up from the public to speak. And with that, Councilor Stapleton.
Yeah, I move that we approve the 2021 Annual Action Plan Amendment Number 2 and 2022 Annual Action Plan Amendment Number 1 to reallocate $450,000 to the Sequoia Crossings Apartment Project and $650,000 to the Cottage Apartments Project.
I'll second that.
Great. I think all of us are sitting here in just eager anticipation for these projects to get underway and completed and folks to be living in them. I am really, really sad that Applegate did not come to fruition. That was going to be a really needed, really supportive housing for veterans in West Salem. And I know that that is an area that we are lacking in our response to the unsheltered crisis and the mental health crisis here in our state and in our city. But if we are going to have to move these funds to another project, these are two wonderful projects. Thank you so much to staff for your time on the presentation and your consideration of these two projects. Thank you.
Any further discussion? If the recorder will please call the roll.
Councilor Varney?
Aye.
Councilor Stapleton?
Aye.
Councilor Nishioka?
Aye.
Councilor Phillips?
Aye.
Councilor Gwynn? Aye. Councilor Gonzalez?
Aye.
Councilor Hoy?
Aye.
Councilor Nordyke?
Aye.
Mayor Hoy?
Aye. Motion passes. And with that, we are on to item 5A, the Planning Commission Annual Report. But I do not see our presenter. Unless I'm
here.
Oh, you're online. Thank you. I didn't realize you were going to be online. There you are.
Yes. Thank you, Mayor Hoy and City Councilors. My name is Shane Briggs. I am in Ward 7 and President of the Salem Planning Commission. I appreciate the ability to present via Zoom. Tomorrow I'll be in your chambers for Planning Commission, so it's great to have a little bit of a break. I'm here to highlight parts of our annual report that you've received. As you know, Planning Commission serves just as an advisory capacity to you on issues that may impact the growth and orderly development of the city. As noted in our report to you, the Commission held public hearings on 11 quasi-judicial land use applications, including comprehensive plan zone changes, council remands, and appeals. Our most challenging quasi-judicial case was that Cooper property that's referenced in your report. Staff had recommended a commercial office zone for that property, which would allow office and housing but no retail. That recommendation was made primarily in the interest of limiting the transportation impacts to that area. The new mixed-use zone, MU3 zone, was created in our Salem. That would allow for drive-throughs. The applicant wanted that MU3 zone so they could have the drive-throughs closer to that I-5 interchange. There was some pushback from the neighborhood association and neighbors. The compromise we reached was to limit the applicant to 3 drive-throughs and no building footprint that was going to be greater than 70,000 square feet. Planning Commission also held 3 work sessions on the draft updates to the sign code, which is still under review. It'll be back in front of Planning Commission for a public hearing later this year. An example of one of the recommended changes is to limit the number and size of flutter flags and inflatable balloons. Currently, businesses have no restriction on the number and size of those. I know that you're very familiar with our Salem work, so it'll suffice to say that Planning Commission was also involved. We held quite a few hearings on the proposal and recommended that you adopt the proposal, which you did in July of 2022. Of course, there's a lot of work ahead. For example, since our Salem has been adopted, there are projects related to planning that we'll need to address. An example of that is an update to the Goal 5 inventory for natural resources. We had a hearing last year that in the case before us was a proposed subdivision in Councilor Barney's ward. One of the issues identified is that there was a property map that didn't show all the waterways and the streams. Hopefully, this future work will ensure accurate representation of those streams in future cases. I'm going to take just a minute to lobby for future appointments to Planning Commission. Both Vice President Levin and I are finishing up our 8th and final year on Planning Commission. We've been fortunate to have Commissioner Levin because he brings that on-the-ground land use background. When we step down, I would urge consideration of at least one appointment with that knowledge. Lastly, I want to commend Lisa Anderson-Ogilvie and her team on their expertise and professionalism. Lisa and Shelby have been wonderful to work with, and I'm sure my colleagues are all in agreement on that. And with that brief synopsis, I will be glad to take your questions or comments.
Thank you. Are there questions or comments for Ms. Griggs? Councilor Nordyke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, thank you, Ms. Griggs, for your leadership on Planning Commission. I think Planning Commission is half as sexy as council, and council's not sexy. So thank you for that work that you guys do. And we sincerely appreciate the recommendations that you bring to us. I want to give you an opportunity to reflect, how can the Planning Commission moving forward help us increase the affordability of housing in Salem?
I think we're doing that through these gradual changes to the UDC. I think our Salem is going to put us in a position where there are going to be even more opportunities to increase that ability to provide affordable housing. We've done that in a number of ways already with your recommendations and approval. I think we need to look at more creative ways to manage unique areas of land, the few land areas that we have left in the UGB. And we have started to modify development codes so that the codes that apply to large, uniform, flat lands don't necessarily work for these smaller, unique areas. So I think we need to listen and to the trends that we see in front of Planning Commission, because they're coming to us with requests to have adjustments because what's in the books is not working. So I think listening to the developers when they come to you and to Planning Commission will give us a good insight of how we can move forward on that.
Thank you.
Councilor Stapleton.
Thank you so much, Mayor. Thank you so much, Jane. It's really good to see you. My question, I was really delighted to see that y'all are tackling the sign code. I hear about it a lot, and I wanted to kind of put my my wants or my longing in the future that we also address the issue of lighting of the signs. I know that that is something I hear about all the time, and the signs keep getting brighter and brighter as we fight for in the attention economy that we have in our society, where we are getting brighter and brighter and flashier and flashier. It is very dangerous and distracting for drivers, and it's also just not really great for the livability of our city, I believe. So that was something I wanted to put out there for consideration for the Planning Committee, and just really thank you for all your work. Thank you for your time. 8 years is a really long time, and that's fantastic. What you've given to our city and for Livin as well. I know I got to work with him a little bit on a subcommittee, and it was nice to work with him. So thank you both for your time and service to the city.
Thank you. And in response to your concern about the lighting, that is a specified criteria in the when a case comes in front of us that has the signs. That's the issue. I think the last one, Lisa can correct me, but we had an issue on lighting and how bright it is, like they can't face the neighborhoods. And there's the scientific measurement of the brightness of light, which I don't know, I can't remember off the top of my head, is listed in the UDC stuff.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Councilor Varney.
Thank you, Mayor Hoy. President Griggs, I just wanted to say thank you so much for your, 8 years of dedicated service. It's kind of a thankless job. I know how much time you all spend. And I wanted to say thank you for the plug on the Goal 5 Natural Resources Inventory and for the Planning Commission's support. Because of that support, we were able to move it higher up on the priority list for projects, and I just wanted to say how much I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. That's wonderful.
Thank you, Councilor. City Manager Staley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to comment in regards to the changes to the sign code. I hope that as we're going through that process, we keep in mind the staffing necessary to enforce those regulations. While it's very nice to write the regulations, without proper enforcement, they really don't do us a whole lot of good. So let's be thinking about that as well. So thank you.
We did add a position 2 years ago, I believe it was. We did add a position specifically for sign code enforcement. So looking forward to that getting enforced.
Big city.
It is a big city. You're right. Any other questions or comments? All right. Well, thank you, Chain, for your report, and thank you for your 8 years of service on the Planning Commission. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
All right. Take care. On to item 5B, which is my motion. I move to direct the city manager to contract with a government relations provider to perform federal lobbying activities on behalf of the city.
Second.
Thank you. We have in the past had a federal lobbyist work on our behalf, and a few years ago we ended that contract for reasons that are kind of irrelevant at this point. It wasn't because of the lack of need, it was other issues. And it's become more and more obvious to me recently that we are really missing out by not having a federal voice to help us in Washington, D.C. We do have our delegation, and they're amazing to help advocates, but we need folks whose job it is to really comb through those federal opportunities for funding. And frankly, that's really what it's about. It's about finding more federal funding, and I think a lobbyist could pay for itself very quickly with the first grant. I mean, and it's not a ton of money that I think that this contract would potentially go for, and I think it'll be money well spent. And so I'm hoping that you all will agree with that. Councilor Nordyke.
Thank you. The motion states that you want to contract with a government relations provider. Do we have someone in mind for this position?
No.
Okay. And do we have a ballpark yet for what that contract might look like? Knowing we couldn't have a precise number now, but do we have a general sense of how much this might cost?
I believe the city manager does.
Yes, we do. We anticipate it'll be somewhere between $50,000 and $100,000 a year. But again, we haven't started any sort of RFP or RFQ for those services, and we'll get into the details when we scope the contract.
Thank you.
Other questions? Councilor Stapleton.
Thank you. I fully support this motion. I know we were talking about this at the Legislative Committee, and just knowing how much is out there in federal funding right now, I have, for a long time, felt a tad bit of anxiety that we haven't been actively seeking those federal funds and positioning ourselves to benefit from the really historic amount of funds that are coming out of Washington. And I am really excited about this. I hope that we can see the benefit very quickly, but I know that we will maybe at the legislative committee or whether that's here as well, kind of get a list of things that have been successful since hiring somebody to take on this task. I think that would be really great for not only the council, but the city to see what an investment has paid off in that way. So I am excited to vote yes for this.
Thank you, Councilor. I did forget to mention that this does come with the recommendation from the legislative committee as well. They unanimously supported this ask, so just for your edification there. Any other questions or comments? Councilor Phillips.
At the risk of being redundant, I'm speaking up to support this. I serve on the subcommittee that is the legislative subcommittee. And I think that we've seen, with the outstanding lobbying on behalf of the city, how it works with our state government and how successful it's been over the past several years. And I think there's an opportunity cost to not having this. So I think it's an excellent motion. I think it's timely, and I think there's a potential to really get a lot back, as you're alluding to. So I plan to vote for it.
Thank you, Councilor. Other questions or comments? If the recorder will please call the roll.
Councilor Stapleton.
Aye.
Councilor Nishioka.
Aye.
Councilor Phillips.
Aye.
Councilor Gwynn.
Aye.
Councilor Gonzalez.
Aye.
Councilor Hoy.
Aye.
Councilor Nordyke.
Aye.
Councilor Varney.
Aye.
Mayor Hoy.
Aye. Motion passes. Item 5C, Councilor Nishioka.
Thank you, Mayor Hoy. I move that City Council direct staff to prepare a report for Council's consideration concerning whether to continue to allow short-term rentals in residential neighborhoods.
Second.
Councilor?
Thank you. I brought this motion forward partly due to the 6G that's on our information report. And I will have to say, I understand the concern of people who live in a neighborhood that feel having a short-term rental may present a different feel for their neighborhood. And I can understand concerns. But at the same time, I also recognize the importance of having short-term and long-term rentals in our city. They are an important part of people that come in to visit, whether it's vacation, whether it's to come in, as Ms. Jones was saying, legislators, people that may be coming for a short term of work. And to not be able to be in a residential area with children that are trying to go to school, I think that it's problematic. What I do want to see is city staff review the codes for short-term rentals, and as we've learned, it sounds like there's many that maybe aren't complying with regulations. So I'd like to understand what the city staff could maybe see about short-term rentals in neighborhoods.
Thank you, Councilor. I know it wasn't stated in your motion, but I'm wondering if you're also concerned about safety implications and law enforcement and that sort of thing?
Thank you, Mayor Hoy. Yes, especially with the recent article in the paper, there are concerns that sometimes they might bring in elements of danger or criminal activity. And so again, it would be nice to see if we can kind of run reports and get feedback from staff for council to consider if any changes might need to be made.
Thank you, Councilor. Questions or comments? Councilor Nordyke.
Thank you. One thing I hope to see in the staff report, and I do intend to vote yes, there's a lot of conflicting information on whether short-term rentals impact affordability of housing. And so I would like to get the hard data on that. I just want to know what the information is so that we as a council can make informed decisions. But that affordability of housing is very top of mind for my residents, and I think that's true really across the state of Oregon. So I would encourage city staff to listen thoughtfully to our comments tonight and know that that's something I will be specifically looking for in the report.
Thank you, Councilor. Along those lines, I'm concerned about a housing stock, which I think is directly related to affordability.
Right.
And is there a negative impact on our housing stock? Is there not? You know, is it a trade-off that's worth it? I don't know. I have, you know, you hear a lot of different anecdotes, but I would like to have some better data on that. So thank you for raising that. Other questions or comments? Councilor Hoy.
Just a quick comment, Mr. Mayor, to the gentleman that testified, and I apologize, I don't remember his first name, but in the interest of fairness, I think it would be really good to review the code and find out who is not in compliance with that. If it's called code, I really don't know that, but to make sure that we aren't missing out on income for the city because those are being overlooked. So,
thank you, Councilor. Councilor Phillips.
This may be obvious to staff. Thank you, Mayor Hoy, and thank you for the motion. This may be obvious to staff, but just at the risk of not stating it, it would be helpful for me if we look at communities that both do this and don't do this, just so we kind of have an understanding. This is an entirely new concept for me that I don't recall coming into in the last 2 years as I've served in this body. So, and I wouldn't be opposed to meeting with staff as well in small groups if that's beneficial. It could be a lot to get in one like presentation during council meeting. So those are just my thoughts.
Thank you, Councilor. Yes, there was a day a few years ago or a couple of different times when we got to consider things like whether to allow Uber in the city, and then also we got to figure out if we were going to allow Airbnb and that sort of short-term rental, and we wrote it into our code that we actually do allow it. And so, as I understand the councilor's motion, we're going to reconsider that work that we did a few years ago, and that's okay because you know things change and circumstances change, and sometimes it's good to take a fresh look. So, Councilor Gwynn.
So my concern is also what Councilor Phillips just alluded to, and that is, as Mr. Burke stated, after reading the agenda, I searched on Airbnb too and found over 100 properties that are currently for rent in Salem as short-term rentals. And I even went to look, okay, is this actually within the city limits? And they were. So then I called Lisa and I said, Lisa, how many registered short-term rentals do we have? And I can't remember, you sent it to me, but there are very, very few that are registered and licensed, and I'd like you to speak to that.
And Ms. Anderson-Ogilvie, if you could, while you're mentioning or answering the councilor's questions, if you could mention what the incentive is for us to actually know the number and have them actually be registered, and why might we be interested in that?
Sure. Lisa Anderson-Ogilvie, your planning administrator. As of today, when we talked, we have 13 accessory short-term rentals that are licensed and 3 short-term rentals. So the difference, accessory is you live there, you rent out the whole house, no more than 95 days out of the year, or you just rent rooms and you're there while you're renting your rooms. You don't need a conditional use permit, you just need a license. If you're gonna rent the entire house, you don't live there, it's a single family zone, you need a conditional use permit, and that's called a short-term rental because it's just the only use of the house is for a short-term rental. So right now we have 13 licensed for accessory and we have 3 licensed for short-term. The license are, pardon me?
I'm sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
Does that include the one on Church Street?
They have not got a license yet because they just got approval and they're waiting to see if it's going to be reviewed by the council. Last year we had about 35 that were licensed and they're good through December. So every year some people are slow to get their renewal or some people drop off. I'll assume it's because they're no longer doing it, but it could just be because they didn't apply for the license the next year. We don't currently go out and try to find the ones that are doing it that don't have a license, and Airbnb does not provide the addresses to us or to any city, so they don't make it easy for us to track that. If they're selling their rooms through Airbnb, they do pay the transit occupancy tax, whether or not they have a license with us. We do have an agreement with Airbnb, and they collect the tax for us and give it to the city. But my understanding is we get it just like a chunk payment, and they don't say that, you know, it's for these addresses. So when somebody gets a license, we do make sure that they're paying the tax. In case they're doing it with a different platform, we still collect the transit occupancy tax from them. Obviously, we want them to be licensed because we want to make sure they're operating them in the way that we've designed in our code, and that they have, you know, they're not doing weddings or parties there, they're not doing too many rooms, they're not parking in the front yard, that kind of thing. We do notice the neighbors when they get the license, the neighborhood association, and we post on the website who a local contact is, so that way if the neighbor has a concern on a weekend or something like that, they would have like a property manager, somebody that they could contact, which we wrote into our code. So it is important that people get the license, but I do believe that there are many people operating them without licenses currently.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson-Ogilvie. I want to do a quick rewind on a couple of things that you said and also back to what Mr. Burke said. So as I understood what you said, we currently allow short-term rentals, otherwise known as Airbnbs, that are the entire residence where the person doesn't live there. That's currently allowed in our code. Is that true?
That's correct. And in a single-family zone, you need a conditional use to do that. In a commercial zone or some other zones, you can just do it. It's permitted. You don't need to go through that process.
And is that the process that they went through for the residents that they were mentioning in the public comment?
Correct. Yes.
So they went through it. We have a process. They went through it.
Yes.
They complied with it, and here we are.
They got an approval from the hearings officer, and it's an information report tonight on your agenda.
Thank you.
Yes.
Other questions or comments? Councilor Gwynn.
I have one more comment and I guess ask when staff is reviewing this. So I know Bend and Lincoln City have both looked at and changed their short-term rental criterias, and they have, so when they made that change, they allowed existing uses to remain. So I guess that would be my ask, because people like these folks who have spent, they say, over $8,000 in permits and trying to do the right thing, I would hate to see us then, if it were to get approved, to pull it back and say, starting next year, you can't do that, or doesn't seem like it would be fair to me.
And generally, when the zoning code is updated, it applies to future uses. And so if somebody's already has approval for that use, then they're, if you've heard the term non-conforming or grandfathered in or something like that, that's what it's referring to, is that you met the rules at the time and you can continue. Generally, with our short-term rentals, we don't allow them to transfer to a new owner. So if, you know, under this scenario, if the rules were to change and if they get their approval, they could continue doing that, but then a new owner couldn't buy the house and use it for the same type of use in the future.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson-Ogilvie. One second, Councilor Varney. So as I understand the motion, we're not changing the rules tonight. We're going to go out and consider, you're going to go out and take a look at them. You're going to report back to us on a bunch of different things that we've asked you to look at. And then we're going to decide whether we want to consider a rule change in the future. Is that as you understand it?
Absolutely. We'll bring back information and you'll have options to make changes, not make changes.
Great.
Yes.
Thank you. Councilor Varney.
Thank you. My question is more of a, I guess, a definition. What is the difference between a short-term rental and a long-term rental? Because I had just assumed Airbnbs being short-term rentals, that it was just less than a month or less than a week or whatever it is. So what is the actual definition?
So short-term rental is 30 days or less. And then beyond 30 days, we consider that long-term rental, or like a month-to-month. If you're renting a house to somebody and they're living there all year, they sign a lease or something like that. So anything less than 30 days.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilor Gonzalez.
So I have a lot to say on this. You know, I even had to write it down. So housing is work that gets me up every day, pretty much half my life. Unofficially, actually, my work started when I was 16. My dad managed the St. Joseph shelter in Mount Angel for over 20 years. It was technically a homeless immigrant farm worker shelter. And we lived on that site, on site, and my brother and I, that was our job throughout our high school. Peak season, there was about 200 single men there, so it was, we learned a lot. You know, I joined the real estate industry to be able to raise my son on my terms, but what kept me in this industry was the huge need I saw. You see, housing and property ownership is really a system of the privileged. And that's what I'm seeing. I feel like we're going a little bit backwards today. Okay. For us, it was at our office, what kept me here was helping our niche, which was non-English speaking immigrants. It's still not easy work. The good news is I don't have to explain this anymore. We all know how important housing is in our world. I've had a great career, but I feel I've just started. Even though I'm entering my 25th year in this industry. I was appointed by the governor and now chair of the Oregon Real Estate Board. Our fully bilingual office will be celebrating 30 years here in Salem, so I feel blessed. I wanted to share that for the people that don't know me. And I appreciate any effort to sustain our housing stock. But that's not what seems to be driving this conversation. And like I said, I feel like this is going to take us backwards to the times of harsh housing laws, NIMBY, not in my backyard, and other conditions that many HOAs are having to currently remove from their bylaws today. And many think, like people have mentioned, a lot of Airbnbs are thought of as party houses or some loss of control. And it's similar, like you said, Mayor, what people said about Uber. And we're fine today, the world didn't end. And in fact, Uber and others gave the regular person an option to better utilize what they already had. Salem's industry is not tourism driven, as areas where Airbnb may be throwing things off. But we do have a huge need to ensure people coming into Salem have enough options. Several staff, mayor, councilors, and I toured a development in Vancouver. And that developer who intends to develop a portion of the true property said a recent analysis showed that Salem is still short of hotel rooms even after the new Holman Hotel opens. So right now we're behind on short-term housing. A few stories come to mind. One is mine. We traveled to LA a few years ago during COVID. We were vaccinated, had our cards, masks, everything ready to go. But we missed a new rule that was deep in a website that said only California residents could rent hotel rooms. So we didn't get any notifications. It was deep in a state website, so we show up at the hotel at 10 p.m. tired with the kids, and they turned us away from our prepaid room. They simply said sorry, and there was nothing we could do. And traveling with families is hard, and not many places are designed for that, especially hotel rooms. We actually have to book minimum of 2 rooms and sometimes 3 rooms. So most hotel rooms, like I said, are just not family friendly. Luckily, we jumped online, found an Airbnb that was able to accommodate us, and we felt bad for that owner because they came and opened up that door at 11:30 at night. We didn't have to pay for extra parking as many of those hotels charge, and we were able to stay in one apartment, separate bedrooms. And like I said, even though we prefer the amenities of a hotel, Airbnb is just better fit our family. I only know one person that owns Airbnb, and I was able to chat with him before our meeting. And what he said surprised me, but now it doesn't. He thought he'd be renting his house out for a few days at a time, but over the last 6 months, he's only had 2 guests, each for several months at a time, work and family related. One was needing to be close to a sick relative. So ask yourself, what would you do if you went to a city and you only needed to rent a place for a few months? Where would you go? The current housing system is really designed for long-term rental, over 1 year. So that leaves a lot of people out, and it's gonna make it a lot harder for those people if we remove this option. I also spoke to an insurance broker friend of mine who's very familiar with this, and they rely on short-term rentals for cases with water damage. And even though fires aren't common, minor fires that can displace a family for almost a year. And we can't forget what happened with the San Diego fire. It's gonna happen again because of climate change. And those that don't know, many families had to live in their cars, campsites, and the lucky ones got hotels and houses. But on the technical side, he said that insurance policies for people doing Airbnb are all residential policies. They change regularly because a person may decide to live in it for a while, then not. 1 minute may be a second home, then not. So for them, it's really a residential use because it's in a residential zone. So I would like to counsel and staff to not add any more restrictions, not allow NIMBY type actions. And remember, the true cause of Alarca housing is almost a decade of underbuilding that was a result of the Great Recession. I lived it. I suffered through that. And like a few people mentioned, Airbnb shows 150 units in Salem, many of which are single rooms where the owner lives there. I didn't check any other sites, but assuming we have 50 to 60,000 total housing units in Salem, that's less than 0.002% of the housing. The market's always changing, we're seeing that. And there was a jump in short-term rentals, but that's just from the hype, and I think it's going down because Airbnb is not easy. And if we give the market time, it'll balance it out. So I just don't want to be looking for a solution for a problem that really isn't here. We need to ensure everybody gets the same treatment whenever when they go for those conditional use permits. But I just don't want to get in the habit of trying to limit or prohibit short-term rentals based on a few neighbors. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor. I've been listening to all the comments, and I'm not sure yet how I'm going to vote. I think I will probably vote in favor, but not because I'm interested in eliminating short-term rentals necessarily in our residential areas, but because I think it's good to take a fresh look at our policies and see if there are things that we could do better, but not with the motivation of eliminating it. So if I do decide to vote yes, I want you to understand that don't assume that I'm ready to eliminate them, because I'm not. So, Councilor Nishioka.
And I will agree with that. My goal was to review the policies, but not to eliminate them. So that's the motion, is to review policies, to make changes if necessary, to see if they can evaluate those that are not compliant, but not to remove them. They're critical, I feel. And even if they're low numbers, they're critical.
No, I thank you for your time. I just want to let people know I don't have 3 minutes, a minimum. That's what councilors get, so I just wanted to thank everybody for listening to my story.
Thank you, Councilor. Other questions or comments? If the recorder will please call the roll.
Councilor Nishioka.
Aye.
Councilor Phillips.
Aye.
Councilor Gwynn.
Nay.
Councilor Gonzalez.
Nay.
Councilor Hoy.
Aye.
Councilor Nordyke.
Aye.
Councilor Varney.
Aye.
Councilor Stapleton. Aye. Mayor Hoy.
Aye. Motion passes. Item 3.3F, Councilor Nordyke.
Thank you. One moment. Let's see. So I move to have City Council approve the updated listing of City of Salem priorities and policy statements and positions on specific bills for the 2023 legislative session.
Second.
Councilor.
Thank you. So the reason I pulled it is I just wanted to draw additional attention to some of the items in this document. First of all, I was really pleased to see adding support for our airport. We know we had a lot of testimony on both sides regarding the airport. And one of the biggest objections that we heard was about the potential cost of upgrading the airport. So there's really no harm in asking our legislature to make this a funding priority. The worst thing they can do is say no. But by demonstrating that this is a priority, it is possible that we might receive some additional funds to upgrade our terminal and sustain our airport for commercial service. So I was pleased to see that. The other thing that I wanted to specifically call out will be back in reference to what I said at the beginning of our meeting. I'm pleased to see support for House Bill 2757, which I already mentioned. And just to relay it, it would, if it passes in its current form, and who knows, right? It's the start of the session, anything can happen. But if it were to pass in its current form, it would create a trust fund. Because right now there's a lot of off and on money, a lot of one-time money. There's a lot of questions about how will these funds be sustainable long-term for 988 funding, for mobile crisis intervention, and so on. And so the idea of just creating a reliable baseline level of funding for mobile crisis is something that's, as you all know, is something I've been championing for a long time. And what we're seeing is really the sequel to the legislation that was passed in a prior legislative year. And so I would encourage my peers to contact your legislators and vocalize your support for House Bill 2757. It is among our funding priorities after all, so we would be speaking with a unified voice. And I also recommend taking a close look at the governor's budget recommendations, because the governor has set aside in her recommendations over $47 million for mobile crisis teams, for funding programs like Cahoots in Eugene. And 18+ million for funding 988 call centers, which again are suicide and crisis lifelines. So if we look at the trajectory of where we're heading as a state, I'm optimistic that there's going to be more realistic, sustainable, and stable funding for civilian-based mobile crisis response, in addition to the patchwork quilt of various response teams that we have in operation in the Salem area right now. So I just want to encourage my peers to vocalize their support, because I sure get an earful about it all the time from constituents across our city, whether they're in my ward or not. So for all those reasons, I'm moving to approve our legislative priorities.
Thank you, Councilor. For additional comments? If the recorder will please call the roll.
Counselor Phillips.
Aye.
Counselor Gwynn.
Aye.
Counselor Gonzalez. Counselor Hoy.
Aye.
Counselor Nordyke.
Aye.
Counselor Varney.
Aye.
Counselor Stapleton.
Aye.
Counselor Nishioka. Aye. Mayor Hoy.
Aye. Motion passes. On to information reports. Item 6A. Any questions or comments? Item 6B. Item 6C. Tell me if I'm going too fast. All right. Item 6D. Item 6E.
Mayor?
Yes.
may I? Okay, I just wanted to say that this one was hard for me to have come across my desk. It is a really great spot in the Highland neighborhood, and it would be lovely to see that developed in a way that really highlights the uniqueness of that community and adds to the sense of community there. This was put in before the Our Salem plan was adopted, and so it is fully conforming to what we had at the time. It is disappointing, and I know that the Highland Neighborhood Association and the neighbors there are sad to see this happen, but it is what it is, and so I just wanted to, I guess, voice that angst and frustration and hope for a better future with that amazing Our Salem plan that we have in place now.
And what it is another used car lot. Yes. Item 6F. Item 6G.
Yes, Mayor Hoy, thank you.
Councilor Nishioka.
I would like to, I move that a City Council call up for review item 6G for the hearing officer's approval of a conditional use permit for short-term rental at 795 Church Street. May I go ahead and?
Not till we have a second.
Thank you.
I will second.
Go ahead, Councilor.
Thank you. I'm calling this up as a courtesy. The neighbors in the Gady Hill area have been very passionate about the 795 Church Street becoming a short-term rental. And I do understand that passion and frustration because they feel that their neighborhood is changing. And I respect that. But at the same time, everything was followed. All of the policies were followed. And the homeowners have done the changes that have been requested of them. So I'm calling it up as a courtesy, but I will be voting no. I believe that the hearing officer's decision was appropriate.
Thank you, Councilor. Additional comments? Councilor Stapleton.
Yeah, I'll speak to this. Thank you, Linda. I know this is where it's hard to be a counselor sometimes. You know, I think a lot of people don't fully understand what it's like to be sitting here and to go to neighborhood association meetings and to run into your neighbors and friends at the grocery store, and you always got to talk shop. So those are hard times, but I tend to agree with where you landed. These folks have done everything by the book. They have met all of the requirements that are put on them by the process that they went through with the, what is it called? The
conditional use process.
Thank you for that. So I appreciate that, and I too will be voting no on this.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Nordyke.
Thank you. I agree with my colleagues, and I would just point to condition 3, which I am hopeful will allay some of the concerns from the neighbors, where it says that activities such as parties, events, gatherings, luncheons, banquets, weddings, meetings, fundraising, commercial or advertising activities are all prohibited at this particular property. And it also limits the number of people and shave down the number of guests that they can have on site. So again, I feel that these folks followed the process, and the permit's pretty strict the way that I see it.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Nishioka or Councilor Phillips?
Thank you, Mayor Hoy, and thank you for the motion. This might be a question for staff. I listened to the testimony that came before us by the persons who kind of represented this specific spot, and I've also perused the testimony that received written from people who live in that neighborhood, and I can see both points of view from a certain perspective. But I guess my question is it an accurate summary, like to say that the testimony from the applicant's behalf of this item want it called up as well because they don't want 8 conditions, or is that an overstatement?
Well, that's what I heard them ask us to change those things, but I think maybe we need some technical advice from Ms. Anderson Ogilvie to sort of sort things out for us there, or perhaps our attorney.
Lisa Anderson Ogilvie for the record. Well, the applicant had an opportunity to appeal the decision and did not appeal it. But I did hear them state that they were in disagreement with many of the conditions tonight. So that's maybe a mixed message. Maybe they are thinking you're going to call it up. And if so, they want to tell you ahead of the hearing that they, are concerned about the conditions. If it's not called up tonight, the decision's final. The appeal period has already passed.
Did that answer your question?
I think it helps.
Okay,
thank you. Sorry, nope. You have to be one in the seats down here. Other questions or comments? Councilor Nishioka?
I would just like to say to the Bensons, I know again that it's been very frustrating for you, but I would hope that you would welcome the visitors that go to the house and try to make them feel welcome and just try to embrace it. See if that maybe you can look at it as a positive and not a negative.
Thank you, Councilor. I've been having mixed thoughts about this whole question. I stayed in an Airbnb recently in Bend, and it was a full-time short-term rental. I would like to think that I didn't ruin the neighborhood while I was there. The neighbors might not agree because I brought my dogs, which were allowed, and which I paid the extra fee. But I don't think we ruined the neighborhood as best I can tell. And I really enjoyed the time in Bend, and it was really a much nicer, because I wanted to take my dogs with me, it was a much nicer experience than I had to board them or something here and then just go without them. So I enjoyed that experience. But I stated earlier that I'm concerned about the impact on housing and that sort of thing, and those things are all true. I am not concerned about the impact of this rental on a neighborhood. I'm just not. If there is a process in place, if there are problems, there can be complaints, we can investigate, and if there are code violations, we can deal with that. And I think the record shows that we have not had complaints on these types of properties throughout the city. I'm optimistic that we have responsible homeowners here who are going to manage their property responsible. So I too will be voting no. Other comments? If the recorder will please call the roll.
Councilor Gwynn.
No, nay.
Councilor Gonzalez.
Nay.
Councilor Hoy.
Nay.
Councilor Nordyke.
Aye.
Councilor Varney.
Nay.
Councilor Stapleton.
Nay.
Councilor Nishioka.
Nay.
Councilor Phillips.
Nay.
Mayor Hoy.
Nay. Motion fails. We have no ordinances this evening. We already addressed item 8, public comment other than agenda items. Seeing nothing else, we are adjourned.
Good meeting.
Thank you. Thanks.